Yesterday at his intro press conference, JJ Redick referred to LeBron as a quote-unquote friend, but said he and LeBron made it a point not to talk about the Laker job until 30 minutes after he had been offered that job. So, Keyshawn, is it a good thing or a bad thing that JJ will be coaching a friend who's only about 6 months younger than JJ is?
It's not a bad thing at all, though, Skip. And I have firsthand experience, both at the college and at the pro level, with my friends, really good friends, like brother-type friends coaching me. So in college, Delvon Alexander was a backup to me my junior and my senior year. My junior year. My senior year, he coached me. He became the receivers coach.
Okay. But
I went on to become...
But he obviously wasn't the head coach, but go ahead.
No, but he was... In football, having a position coach is just like having a head coach, because I'm dealing with you every single day. Mm-hmm. I went on to be the #1 overall pick, the Rose Bowl MVP. The rest was history. In the pros, Todd Haley, when I got there in 1996, he was just a guy. Bill comes in, Parcells comes in, and he hires him as my receiver coach. I go on 2 Pro Bowls later under Todd Haley, friends to this day. It's all about the respect level. Do I respect you? Do I respect you? Do I like what you're talking about? Do we see the same things eye to eye? Plus, on top of that, do I value your IQ? Do I know what you're talking about? Or do I believe I know what you're talking about? Or is just, you don't really know what you're talking about? I like hanging out with you and drinking wine. I don't think that's the case with LeBron and JJ. I think LeBron really, truly thinks that JJ knows basketball. He has to. 15 years in the league and one of the most decorated college basketball players in the history of college basketball. How could you not know basketball? I know basketball. You know basketball. Oh, we align together. We see the same things. We may not ever hang out off the court, but when we inside the building, it's friendly. It's not a problem. The problem that I have with that, though, is what's the other players? I keep going back to that. Because when the other players see LeBron and JJ, and they hear all this and they know all this, boys, how do they react to it when things aren't going right? Yep. When LeBron James throws the ball Luka style behind his head a couple times, not that he'll do that, but you know what I'm saying. Or he pulls up a half-court 3 when he shouldn't, and JJ doesn't say anything. What's that guy that's in the middle of the bench gonna say? That's where it gets a little sticky on how do you, if you're JJ, handle Anthony Davis and LeBron James, because they go hand in hand. It ain't just LeBron. It's Anthony Davis, too, because if I'm LeBron's friend, most likely I'm Anthony Davis's friend as well. That's the problem JJ's up against.
Look, it's really up to LeBron. And this is not in JJ's control. LeBron, if he decides to give JJ a long road and a grace of saying, hey, you're my friend, I want you to succeed, I'm going to try to smooth the path for you, that will be great for JJ. And by the way, to your point about respect, they didn't have, yes, we saw one clip of them drinking wine, but it was not a hangout podcast. It was not like Paul George's podcast, which is interviews. It's not just a hangout podcast, which we've seen in other places. This was a basketball strategy podcast. So the fact that they met in the middle on this one is indicative of, hey, you're my friend. But this is one of the reasons why you're my friend. You're not my friend because we like to sit around and watch the Vuitton fashion show. You're my friend because we respect each other on a basketball level. And that's an important distinction when talking about this. However, I will say, as long as the road goes on, that's great. As much grace and road that he gives him is great. It's going to go off an absolute cliff if LeBron decides, I've lost patience, this isn't working, I don't like how this is going. Because that's where he's only 6 months older than me, he has no coaching experience. This is a lot on LeBron's faith and goodwill, and if he removes that, then there's going to be huge
See, I don't think LeBron's ever going to remove that.
He might not.
And the reason LeBron's never going to remove that, because this is really, truly the first time, and I may be wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, that we view this as a LeBron James hire. This is the first time. We always view the fires as LeBron's, but this is the first time. And the reason I say this is because of the age, on top of them having a podcast together, and much like you mentioned, Skip, if there was no podcast, there would probably be no JJ Redick. So this is really like even though they say, hey, I hadn't talked to him about the job, Sure. Beforehand, or LeBron has nothing to do with it, okay, sure. That's fine.
That tune changed a little bit yesterday, too.
But you know how I get it. But this is the first time, Skip, that we've really seen LeBron this close to a head coach. This close.
Yeah.
Right? It's the first time.
Okay. So I've mentioned this before, but we had Byron Scott. You had him on your podcast, but he sat in Rachel's seat and he said, a little bittersweetly, because he did not like what had happened to Darvin Ham, he just said, LeBron should be the coach. He should be the player coach. This is about as close as you can get to that to me, because I do now consider LeBron the associate head coach or the co-head coach, however you want to look at it, because they do have a rapport and a line of communication that is going to be very rare between a first-time head coach and a superstar player. And I do think they can communicate, and that LeBron can be his guide. And LeBron can tell him pre and post game this, that, and the other, critique it a little bit and suggest things that JJ will then implement at the highest level, because JJ's IQ is at the highest level and is in the ballpark with LeBron's. So I actually like that. But again, you're talking about your position coach, your receiver coach, and I get that. But your receiver coach can play more good cop for you. There has to be a bad cop in this equation, and that's where the head coach would have to come in above Todd Haley or whoever. I don't know which scenario it was, but somebody has to say no. Yeah. Somebody has to have the buck stops on this desk and no. I hear what you're saying about Keyshawn, but no, we can't allow that. You can't, you got to fly back with the team. You can't stay over, whatever those little things are that happen from day to day. Okay, so I've tried to rack my brain. In the NBA, has there ever been a coach who was close friends with a player? Well, it's just odd. It's an odd situation because of the timing and the age range. But I assume Magic, he only lasted 16 games, but he coached James Worthy, and I'm pretty sure they're close friends, right? But it didn't work because Magic just threw up his hands and said, I can't do this.
Well, Magic and James Worthy, in terms of playing together and being him coaching them, they basically they're the same. Yeah, they basically the same. James Worthy saw what Magic saw. It was like, buck this over with, man. Let's just go.
All right, so now we go all the way back to the great Mr. Russell, Bill Russell, and he was a player coach for a number of years, and they kept winning championships. And I wasn't around those teams, but I do know.
Are we sure?
He was he was as tough as they come, and friendship or relationships would not get in the way of him coaching that basketball team hard.
Well, it's because he was better than everyone else.
He was just way better, and he would let you know about it in a good way. Yeah. So that I disqualified that situation. It's very unusual this had happened because we didn't have podcasts before, and these guys had a chance. They are talking the deep basketball on a weekly basis on this podcast. I don't know how long it goes, an hour or whatever it is, but it's a lot of conversation that is actually forced because it's going public. So you're not just hanging out, just shooting the breeze and sipping wine. You have to stay on point and compare notes with each other to the point that the conversation, I listened to a couple of them, it's very good. It got very deep to the point LeBron is saying, this guy really can know it and talk it. Because it's some superstars or ex-stars or even ex-players, they just can't speak the language. They see it, but they can't actually verbalize it, and JJ can verbalize it. So their rapport and their ability to communicate is going to be at the highest of levels. So I'm fascinated to see how many times LeBron in a sideline huddle would just lean over and whisper in his ear, I think we should whatever, I think we should play zone for a couple of possessions or whatever, right? And would JJ listen to everything LeBron said? I'm going to say yes, he will.
Well, I think it's going to also depend on his assistant coaches that he has on board, too. It's not like LeBron hasn't suggested things to the prior coaches before JJ Redick or any other 9 coaches that he's had. I'm sure he's certainly communicated with them because that's what you do. You talk to your coaches about X's and O's and what plays they like and what we should run and how we should go about doing things. So I wouldn't be shocked about that at all. That's
Okay.
going to happen.
Okay.
1,000%.
Do you think? Go ahead. Did you?
Well, I
want
was going to say, we
Yeah.
saw a pretty famous example of it with LeBron. They were playing a playoff game in Chicago. David Blatt was his coach, sent in a play at the end of the game. It was a
for
1-point
Kyrie.
difference. It was for Kyrie. And LeBron very famously afterward just sat up at the podium and said, I scratched it. I scratched it, and I'm going to go do my own
And then he
thing.
scratched David Blatt.
And by the way, he did.
He did.
And he won that game.
But he
and that
didn't
was
hire
sort of-
David Blatt.
But
though.
No, he didn't.
I will,
different.
I
No,
will
Dan
say-
Gilbert did, and that was a little out of the box. That was
Yes.
because he was a Euro sensation, right?
And that didn't, first time NBA
Yeah.
head coach,
Yes,
didn't work,
there
although
you
he
go.
had coaching experience. Look, he has already been coached by a friend. Ty Lue coached him. And one of the things that Ty Lue did so effectively is, even though they were better friends than any other coach LeBron has had, there's no question. If you look down the list, Ty Lue is the closest person to him of anyone there and was at the time. However, Ty knew how to hold him accountable. And the truth is, LeBron wants to be coached. He showed that over and over in his career.
No,
he
I
doesn't want to be
believe that.
challenged by someone
Yeah.
he thinks is an idiot.
Yeah,
And he
that
does
is
think.
correct.
He does think, and by the way, he's accurate that he's smarter than most of the coaches or people